What's up guys, TopTierYugioh here, and today I want to show you exactly how Metalfrogs work, and so I figured the best way to do that would be by giving you guys some duel videos. And so we have two matches today, one against ABC and one against Darklords, and I'm going to commentate over all of the duels. And so before getting started, if you haven't seen the deck profile for Toadally Metalfoes or Metalfrogs, whatever you want to call this deck, it's going to be in the top right corner of the screen, and I would recommend watching that before watching this video, because the deck profile really goes into each card choice, why we chose it, and then also it goes into some of the combos so that you can follow along while watching this video a little bit better. And so once again, it's going to be in the top right corner of the screen, so go to that if you haven't already seen it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the duels. And so, in this first duel, I just wanted to show you exactly what an ideal Metalfrog hand looks like. And so, it's going to be 4 Metalfoes and then 1 Frog. And so, because in this hand we had the Swap Frog, we're going to go into our standard Swap Frog combo. So we summon Swap Frog, send another Frog to the graveyard, bounce it back to the hand, and then do our Metalfoe shenanigans, set all of our spell or traps. And then we're going to go ahead and pendulum summon all of our Metalfoes back along with the Swap Frog. Then the Swap Frog will send Ronin Toadin to the graveyard, then we can summon the Ronin Toadin, go into Toadally Awesome, and then go into some fusions. In this game, I knew I was going against Monarchs, and so I went to the Orichalc because I wanted something to be able to destroy Domain if he does summon it. But that hand is regarded as ideal because we do have a lot of flexibility with it. I could have went into any fusion I wanted to. And then on my opponent's turn, I have the full Metalfoe fusion that will allow me to fuse into anything else that I want, while also having the Toadally Awesome to back that up. So that's why this hand is so good. So now that we know what a perfect hand looks like and what we can do with it, now we can talk about what we would do with a less than perfect hand, which is what we'll draw most of the time. And so in this first match against ABCs, we draw just that, a little bit less than perfect hand. So we have 3 Metalfoes, 1 Raccoon, and 1 Dupe Frog. And so this sort of is one of the major problems with the deck, and not really a major problem, it's not a very bad problem to have, but this deck can sometimes have too many normal summons. And what I mean by that is you have to normal summon your Raccoon in order to search your Unicorn and pendulum summon it. You also need to normal summon your Dupe Frog in order to get that engine going. And so we have 2 normal summons, and we can't use them both in the same turn. And so what should we do in this situation? Now it also depends on the matchup, and so from looking at what my opponent had, again, I'm treating this as if I didn't know what they had, but he had 45 cards in his main deck, because he's 5 in hand, 40 still in the deck. So he's 45 card main deck, and so from that I would assume that he's playing ABCs, because Elvis Vu won that YCS with brilliant ABCs, and I think he played 44, 45 cards. So a lot of people have been taking that build and sort of running with it. And so I assume that he was playing ABC. And ABC have a lot of trouble dealing with Unicorn, because you can just bounce back whatever monster they equip with Hanger. But they also have trouble dealing with Toadally Awesome, because you can negate Hanger. And so as a general rule of thumb, what I like to do is if I have Raccoon and Dupe Frog, I'll go with the Magispector engine and then just pendulum summon my Dupe Frog in defense to protect my board from Thrasher and whatnot. However, if I have Raccoon and Swap Frog, I will go with the Frog engine instead. But because I'm a bad player, I do go against that rule of thumb in this duel, and I decide to go with the Frog engine. And so I go ahead and summon my Dupe Frog and destroy it with a silver at setting a fusion, because I will be able to fuse this turn, then use Dupe Frog to search Swap Frog. Then I use my other silver to set a full Metalfoes fusion, and set my Steel in order to pendulum summon all of my monsters back. Then Swap Frog will be able to send Ronin Toadin to the grave, Raccoon will be able to search my Unicorn, then I'm able to go into Toadally Awesome, and then fuse for a Mithrilium. And Mithrilium plus Toadally Awesome is definitely one of my favorite boards in the game. And then I draw into a Max C off of the fusion, which was very, very lucky. And so just like I said earlier, I do negate the Union Hanger, and I decide to tribute the Toadally Awesome, because Dupe Frog would miss timing if I tribute that. And then after using Toadally Awesome's effect, I do want something to protect my board, and Dupe Frog does just that. And so he does actually play into the Max C, like a lot, and he goes into a Castel to get rid of the Dupe Frog, and then I just fuse for an Alkahest to get rid of the Utopia the Lightning. So this is a really easy duel. He should not have played in the Max C, but I think he loses that game anyways. So in game 2, he gets to go first, and we draw a less than ideal hand. We have 1 Metalfoe, 1 Dupe Frog, 1 Gofu, and then 2 fusions. So this is very bad because none of these cards really work that well together. And if Gofu was a Terra Top, it would be a lot better because I could search combination, then destroy it with a Grand Pulse. But it doesn't really matter because we're going second and we can't really do anything anyways. So I summoned Psyblocker to try to bait the Infinity so I can summon the Gofu and have some tokens for defense. But he doesn't negate the Psyblocker, and then I just can't do anything else that turn pretty much. He banishes my Bismugear and game's over. And so on his next turn, he's able to just do way more than I can handle. And so game 3, I am able to go first, and I do exactly what I said was the correct play in game 1. I decided to go with the Magispector engine, and then I'm going to pendulum summon the Dupe Frog as his backup. because that Dupe Frog will be able to protect me from Thrasher. And so I go through all of my Metalfoe monsters, setting all of my Metalfoe spell traps, and then I Pendulum Summon everything back out. Then I fuse for a Mithrilium, so now I have Mithrilium plus Unicorn plus Dupe Frog, which is a very strong board. And then I also have the full Metalfoes fusion, which I do chain to his Twin Twister. And I use Mithrilium to summon a Volflame. And so now I have Alkahest and Unicorn to kind of deal with whatever he may have left. Now he doesn't really have anything left, but you know, it's still good to have. So now I'm able to beat him down for the rest of the game despite him having anti-spell, because I have more resources than he does, I have bigger monsters than he does. I don't need to worry about anti-spell. And I can deal with any monster that he has, and the only real outs that he can maybe draw would be a Dark Hole. But even Dark Hole won't deal with the Unicorn. And so we end up winning that match against ABCs. So now let's get into the second match, that is against the Darklords, and we will be going first this game, and let's look at our hand. So we have 3 Metalfoes, 1 Swap Frog, and 1 Vanity's Emptiness. However, we have 3 high scales. That's not very good at all because we won't be able to Pendulum Summon. And so I go ahead and destroy the Bismugear to set a full Metalfoes fusion, so I do have a defensive play on my opponent's turn. I just set the Vanity's Emptiness hoping that it will allow me to survive pretty much. And so he special summons Terratop, searches Take Tomborg, and on the summon of Take Tomborg, I go ahead and play the Vanity's Emptiness just so he can't go into a Grand Pulse and destroy my Emptiness. And so it pretty much stops his turn. He sets a couple back row. He does search the Darklord trap that allows you to take control of an opponent's monster, but I didn't know what the other back row was. And I also didn't know which was which. And so this is a pretty dangerous situation, and I should have played it a little more cautiously. And when he maxed the Swap Frog, I kind of went on tilt a little bit, because I was trying to not special summon too much, but at the same time, play around what he had. And then when he played then when he activated the trap that destroyed a card on the field, it definitely caught me by surprise, because I didn't expect him to have drawn that, plus have searched the other trap. And so he sort of catches me with my pants down, and he's able to attack directly on the next turn. So then I draw into a high scale, which was perfect, although I did have the counter in graveyard anyways. But this allows me to pretty much Pendulum Summon my monsters back out, and I Pendulum Summon the Swap Frog and 2 Metalfoes. Then when doing this, I actually forgot about his trap and I misplayed. And so I chained the full Metalfoes fusion going to a Mithrilium thinking that his back row would target, but it doesn't target, and so he just takes my Mithrilium anyways. However, I am able to draw off the Metalfoes fusion, which helps, but I drew into a Gofu, which didn't help. And I go into my Toadally Awesome anyways, but it's just not enough to deal with his board. And then on his turn, he has just way too many resources for me. He has the Pot of Desires, and he also has the one that special summons from the graveyard. But he ends up just attacking over all of my monsters, and then taking control of my Mithrilium once again, and attacking direct with Mithrilium and then Superbia. And so in game 2, I get to go first once again, but this time my hand is a lot better. So I have Dupe Frog, 1 Fusion, and 3 Metalfoes. And I do have a high and low scale this time, so I can actually make plays. So he does max C on the Dupe Frog, which I don't really care about. I'm just going to special summon a little bit less. And probably not go into the Toadally Awesome, because that's going to give him way too many cards. So I go into my Metalfoe shenanigans by destroying my scales in order to set all of my Metalfoe spell or traps. And then I go ahead and set up for a full Metalfoes fusion play on his turn should I need defense, while also having counter combination to guarantee scales on my next turn. So on his turn, he draws through a bunch of cards, and he activates the Darklord that special summons himself from the hand, and he discards the trap that destroys the card in the field. And so I needed to summon the Alkahest before he summons his monster, and so I have to chain the full Metalfoes fusion to his monster's effect, and then on summon I can take control of his monster, and he'll probably chain his monster's effect to destroy Alkahest, which will result in us both just losing our monsters, versus the other way around where he just destroys my monster for free. So with this deck, you definitely have to pay attention to the chain links, and he chains the Twin Twisters, destroying my counter and my scale, which is a huge misconception against Metalfoes, I think. A lot of people believe that you can just destroy counter and a scale, and then I'm just without my scales for next turn, but because he destroyed the counter, I can just add the scale back to my hand and destroy the combination that he knows I have. He knew all of my back row except for the set fusion, so honestly I would have destroyed the fusion because that's the most dangerous one. That's the one you don't know. But ultimately, I think the best play would have been to save the Twin Twisters for my next turn, and then just use it when I'm about to Pendulum Summon, not wasting it on a counter and a scale. That was useless. But then as the chain resolves, I do take his monster, and then he does destroy my Alkahest. But what I didn't expect was for him to have the Soul Charge. And so he Soul Charges back 2 monsters. I'm not sure why he didn't do more. I guess he didn't want to spend too many life points. But then on my next turn, I'm able to go into a Toadally Awesome. That way I can negate his Darklord's effect if he tries to use it. And I use Eccentric to destroy combination, and then Pendulum Summon out all of my monsters. I use Eccentric to destroy the Gamesio, then I fuse for a Mithrilium, and then attack over his Darklord monster, and then directly with the Toadally Awesome. Then I use Metalfrogs effect to bounce my scale back to my hand, and I go through some more Metalfoes shenanigans in order to set my full Metalfoes fusion so I have a defensive play on his turn as well. So on his turn, I summon my Frog, but then he tributes my Toadally Awesome for a Kaiju. And then he summons 2 more Darklords. And then he searches for the Lucifer, so I'm figuring he's about to tribute summon it, so I go into Alkahest and take one of them. That way he can't tribute summon, and that ends his turn. And then on my turn, I'm able to go into another Toadally Awesome, destroy my Bismugear that was on my field that I summoned from the Mithrilium, and then Pendulum summon a Eccentric Archfiend and a Gold Driver. I use Eccentric to destroy his monster and attack direct with the Gold Driver. So in game 3, he lets me go first, which I was really surprised by. But unfortunately, I draw Gofu, 3 Metalfoes, and 1 Swap Frog. And this is another one of those situations where a Terratop would be awesome, so maybe those other guys who wanted to play Terratop were correct. But I go ahead and summon the Gofu, and I'm going to go for an Ultimate Azulkin play, and hope and pray I draw into a low scale. And so I go ahead and fuse for the Adamante, and here's where I make my misplay. I'm still not sure what would have been the correct play. This is definitely a risky play, and I could have done a safer play, but I didn't. I could have summoned my Ultimate Azulkin right here, and then use Stealing to destroy Bismugear, and then set a card from my deck, and that would trigger Zulkin. But instead, I was sort of thinking what the ideal draw would be. So ideally, it would be awesome if I could draw. It would be awesome if I can draw any water monster to discard for the Swap Frog, or any low scale, or even Painful Decision. And so I figured the best way to draw those would be to take the other cards out of my deck. And so I go ahead and activate the Steal and destroy the Bismugear, and then I can either set my Full Metalfoes Fusion, my counter, or my combination. Obviously, Full Metalfoes Fusion would be a bad choice because I don't have any Metalfoes, so between counter and combination. And so if I set combination, it would guarantee my skills on my next turn, but then if I don't draw what I need to, I have pretty much no defense. But counter gives me a little bit of defense, and even if he clears my board, I can summon a 1 scale, and then add that back to my hand on my next turn. So it can also guarantee my skills while giving me some defense as well. So I go ahead and set the counter with a Steal-In, and then I pray to the great Yugi gods that I draw into a low scale or Painful Decision, or even any water monster. But I draw an Eccentric Archfiend, which would have been great with combination. And so I just pass turn with the Gofu and Adamante, that way I have a little bit of defense, more than I would with the Ultimate Azulkin. Then on his turn, he goes through a bunch of plays, goes Terratop, Takedown Board, Tribute summons for Lucifer, and summons Darklord Zerado to clear my board. Now this allowed me to trigger my combination, and I special summon a Bismugear, that way I can search a low scale while having some defense. So in the end phase, I search my 1 scale, I search Silvered, then I draw into a second Eccentric Archfiend. Now he did have the Typhoon, and I don't know why he didn't use it on my low scale, as it was obvious that I had not many low scales. So that was a misplay on his behalf, but it didn't really matter because I did have a counter in the graveyard. But nonetheless, I'm able to Pendulum summon all of my monsters, add the Swap Frog back to my hand, normal summon it to get my Frog engine going, summon a Toadally Awesome, and then destroy his Lucifer with Eccentric Archfiend. I'm also able to fuse into a Mithrilium, and so that gives me a good offensive monster as well. So I'm able to set a Full Metalfoes Fusion from my deck, then use Mithrilium to add my skill back to my hand. And the point of that was just to get my Adamante and my combination back in my deck. And then on his turn, I'm able to summon my Frog. So I used the Toadally Awesome to negate his spell card that keeps him from searching. And then he chains a Maxi to my Toad's effect in the graveyard. And so I decided to chain Full Metalfoes Fusion so that, because if I wait and let Maxi resolve, if I need to summon my Alkahest later in the turn, it would give him a draw, and he might be able to draw into what he needs. And considering he only had 20 cards left in his deck, it's very possible that he did draw what he needed. Or that he draws into like a starter card or a combo piece. And so chaining to the Maxi allowed me to play around it, and it pretty much left him with just that 1 card in his hand, that being the whatever it's called that discards the special summon itself. And so he really didn't have any plays after that, and so I ended up winning that match. And so once again, the chain links can be very important when playing this deck, or Metalfoes in general. And so I hope that this gave a little more insight into Metalfrogs and how to play it. If you're interested in the deck profile, once again, I'll put that in the top right corner of the screen. Definitely check that out. If you have any questions about the duels or you think I made a misplay, definitely let me know in the comments section. I'm always down to hear about what might have been a better play. I would actually really appreciate that. But what else I would appreciate is if you guys would like, comment, and subscribe. So definitely do that too. I would really appreciate it. And thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys later. Bye. Sapphire.